We're live. Hi, everybody. Very happy to introduce you to TG Campbell. So happy whenever you come for a chat with us. Start us off, if people don't know you, with an introduction to yourself and your books.
So yes, I'm TG Campbell. I write the Bow Street Society series of books. They are set in Victorian era London, and they're about a group of amateur detectives who use the ordinary skills from their ordinary jobs to solve extraordinary crimes. Yeah, basically. So they use the skills from their jobs to then solve the crimes that the society is asked to look into.
And you've recently got a book of short stories out.
Yes, so it's the 6th volume in the casebook series. So Bow Society casebook is a short stories, but unlike the main series, they don't have any murders. So they're more sort of unusual, quirky problems. So it's the case of the Scream and the Smog and other stories. That's out on Friday of this week.
Oh, it's not out yet.
No, it's not out yet. No. Yeah, so it's out this Friday. And basically, to celebrate that release, the first 5 volumes on ebook are all free to download for non-Kindle Unlimited customers at the moment. So if you haven't been in the Bow Society series, you just want to dip in and out, the short stories are a good place to start.
They are. They're really entertaining. And I feel even more privileged that I'm reading a copy of them and they're not out until Friday.
Yeah.
What I liked is I was reading the notes in the back, and I'm going to start with those first because you've talked about things like the suspicions of Mr. Witcher.
Yes.
And stuff. Do you use like real crimes as inspiration for your stories?
I don't necessarily base the stories entirely on real crimes. I might snippets of certain crimes might inspire me, but I think especially Mr. Witcher has really sort of captured me because it's got so much detail, so much research into the era and also into the psyche of a police officer. I've always been fascinated by the police and the kind of people that have to take up the position of being a police officer. I wanted to be a police officer myself when I was younger, but I couldn't because of my eyesight. So it's always fascinated me what kind of person does that kind of work, and because it's quite intense work, but also having to be quite professional and sort of quite to sort of compartmentalize your emotions basically. So I don't remember which one did I talk about Mr. Witcher on that one. Oh, that's it, because it's in
the notes in the back of one. I think it might be a story I've not got to yet, if that makes sense. I'll tell you how far I am through in a bit.
Okay, yes. So I think that one is Enter Mr. Witcher. I think because this one set. Oh, God. It's the case of the bold blackmailer. I think it is because it's set in Wolverton, and Mr. Inspector Witcher came to Wolverton Station to question a man who, said that he had committed the Roadhill House murder. When I read Mr. Witcher, I was like, oh my God, I live in Wolverton. That's so amazing. So and I knew exactly which train station he'd come to because it was still standing when I was younger. So I actually remember going to that station. So that was like a bit of a crazy moment.
Awesome. I've read the Scream and the Smog story. That's really clever.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot of research went into that, but I was talking to the official historian of the Peabody Trust, who gave me all the floor plans and photographs and helped me with the historical side of things. Because the Peabody building that's used in the story is a real building. It's still standing and it's still actually used by the Peabody Trust. So I really enjoyed researching that one. I really enjoyed setting it in a bit more of an unusual setting in the sense that the story starts, unlike the other short stories where you start off with the client coming to see Miss Trent. It starts off with the one of the main sort of clients sort of literally trying to find his way home in the smog, and just trying to give the reader the sense of how thick these smogs actually were, and actually literally were, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So I did really enjoy writing that one.
What I think is really good about the Bow Street Society in general, and works really well in the short stories, is that you can just change like the kind of locations and what happens and things, because you can change up the people who are going out.
Yes,
so it's always going to suit someone in the thing, whatever you choose to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's what some people really said to me they really enjoy about the stories, is that you never quite know which detectives Miss Trent is going to send to a case. So even though you know the characters and you know like things going on in their lives, each time you get a new story or a new novel, when the client comes in and says to us, "Oh, this is my problem," you sort of start thinking yourself, "Well, who is she going to send in? Is it going to be something completely new? Is it going to be somebody we've never met before, or is it going to be the same, the familiar faces?" And like I said, I really enjoy the short stories because it gives you an opportunity to pair up characters who wouldn't necessarily work together. And I also found that certain pairings that work really well. So like Dr. Rupert Alexander, who's the veterinary surgeon, and Mr. Callan Skinner, who is the retired naval officer and the guns expert, they really work really well together. So they've actually been in a few short stories where it's had animals and it's had sort of that sort of link with more sort of guns and violence. But it's because it gives you a chance to explore the characters and how they interact together, but also a little bit of the backstory. And because they're not necessarily crimes in a traditional sense, you can sort of see them get a bit more of the idea of their values and their morals, and they're not doing it to catch a criminal, which is more to solve the problem. So I do really enjoy doing the short stories for that reason.
Do you find that fans of your books start to like argue about who you're sending out? Because I got to admit now, I start reading the case and I'm like, oh, so she's sending those ones.
Yeah. No, they don't see it argue, but what I find really fascinating is when I say to people, "Oh, what do you think is going to happen to these characters?" And they tell me, I'm like, "Oh, interesting." Especially when it comes to relationships. Some people say they think certain characters should be together, and I'm like, in my own mind, I could never see those two characters together. So, like, one of the readers said that they thought that Dr. Weeks should get with Miss Georgina Dexter, and I'm like, no. It's like, oh, but he could show, because obviously Dr. Weeks is quite out there. He's quite outspoken. He doesn't really care what people think. Whereas Miss Dexter's quite meek. She's quite young. She's quite unworldly. And I think the reader's idea was, oh, he could show her the ways of the world. And they're like, no. No.
No, I don't know. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
You kind of know, like, after you've read a few of them, you sort of know what their expertise is. So then you get like a team coming together and you're like, oh, is it going to go this way because
because
on the case? Or
I do sort of, when I come to do plan the mystery, I always think, well, who is going to be called in, what skills are going to be needed, what knowledge is going to be needed, and that does sort of form the mystery. But I do also like having members who are just thrown in halfway through. It's a bit of a curveball. You're like, oh, okay, didn't expect that person to turn up. It's interesting to say that you can sort of get to know how you think the mystery is going to go in terms of because who she calls in. That is quite interesting.
I am also really like, one of my new favourites is the architect.
Oh, Mr. Heath.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm currently working on the audiobook of The Curious Client, and Phil Rowe, who is the voice actor who is doing all the male dialogue, he described Mr. Heath as an excitable puppy. I was like, that's a really good description of way to describe him. He is very much very like bouncy and passionate, and he just sort of goes off on a tangent. Where he's got asked something about architecture or something he's passionate about, he just goes off on a tangent. You have to sort of go, excuse me, back in the room, and I really enjoy writing for him. And also with the Scream of the Smog, because he's paired up with Dr. Locke, she's quite serious and quite sort of scientific. But it's good to be able to bounce those two characters off each other.
There's one I've just read with him as well, where they go to a lighthouse.
Oh yeah.
It's really hard with a short story not to give away a spoiler, but that's a good one.
Yeah, originally that one, it was a completely different trio of members who were going to be in that one. So it was really going to be Dr. Lynette Locke, Mr. Gregory Elliott, who's the lawyer, and Mr. Virgil Verity, who's a spiritualist / retired schoolmaster. I can't quite remember how we ended up switching it all around completely, to end up being Dr. Weeks, Mr. Skinner, and Mr. Heath. But I really enjoyed sort of doing research for that, because I read a book inspired by the Ellen Moore lighthouse keepers who disappeared. The 3 lighthouse keepers who disappeared without a trace, and that mystery is still unsolved to this day. But again, I was sort of, with this short story collection, I tried just to shake things up a little bit, try to move a bit more away from London, putting them in out their comfort zones, putting in an environment they're not so familiar with. I mean, Dr. Weeks completely in, remote Scotland. I just thought that's quite amusing. He's not. it doesn't do very well in sort of those sort of situations. But it is good to be able to sort of then move away from London and actually explore the rest of the world as it was in that era, because obviously there was the rest of the world to explore.
Yeah, and it is quite nice seeing them out of their natural comfort zone of London.
Yeah.
I got like, because they really did struggle in places in that story. I think that is what I've just started the one after it. I think that is about as far through as I am.
Okay, so that is okay. I don't remember which one it is that now. So that will be
I feel like I'm a good chunk in. Like
yeah, because you've got so it's the case of the Screaming Smog's the first one. Then it's the case of the impossible implication.
yeah,
Then it's the Nile Lighthouse, and then it's cryptic clues. I think it's Burn Bowl Blackmailer. Yeah, or it's the other way around. I can't remember.
there's one with it. Yeah, because there's one with a school teacher.
That's the impossible implication that's told backwards.
Yeah, that's told backwards. I like that one too. That was a good one.
Yeah. So that was sort of inspired by the film Memento, because I really like that film. But again, it's just trying to toy around to the format, because I've now at this point now I've written 32 short stories, including the ones in anthologies of the case book. So you don't want to sort of do the same format all the time, but the short stories are a good place to be able to toy around the format, toy around different scenarios, different problems, see how basically just explore the universe within the series and sort of decide what the boundaries are in terms of like, is there ghosts, is there not ghosts, how scientific is it, how realistic is it, that sort of thing, really.
Do you find that people read the short stories and then go to the books from there? Have you had people who've been like, I've discovered this in an anthology, or I've read this book?
Yes, I think you're one of those people.
I know, but I always think that I'm probably a bit weird and that I really like short stories.
Oh no! So somebody recently said to me they read, I think it's the case of the Peculiar Portrait and other stories, and he said that he really enjoyed those. That he's now going to go to the novels and to read them. But people just sort of, it's a certain part of the short story collection or the series itself that just picks people's interest, and they start there, and then they'll go and explore the rest of the series. So one of my friends, he read the sixth book in the novel series because it was about boxing, and he really enjoyed boxing, and okay, I'll give it a go. And he read book 6, and now he's gone back to book 1, and he's now reading it in order because he really enjoyed book 6. And again, I think with the short stories, people look at the back and they're like, oh, I quite like the sound of that short story, and so they start off there. And I think people think, oh, the short story is it's sort of a small commitment almost, because if you don't like it, it doesn't actually matter because it's only a short story. If they do quite like it, then they put, oh, I've got this whole novel series to then explore. But again, it really depends sort of how you sort of approach reading generally. But I've also got the character guide, which gives you information about the different characters, their artwork, and everything. And so people again have picked up the character guide at book events. They've gone into their main story series from that. I mean, initially when I first released a short story collection, I was kind of finding that it had almost two groups of readers: people who only read the short stories and people who only read the novels. But now it does very much seem like both of them are feeding in to one another. So people do generally now go from one to the other. But at the moment, I think a lot of people are following the main book series, as keep saying, oh, I haven't read the short stories, but I must read them. So they are definitely people's radar. But it depends how in depth you want to get into a book series, really.
You know this, but I am that much of a fan that I'm going to read all of the things.
Yeah.
Eventually, but I am getting there slowly because I keep having to read for the author chats.
Yeah, because which book are you on at the moment in the main series?
Still stuck in the same place. Because I've read so many books for the author chats this year.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of chance to read out. So I've read all the short stories that I had.
Yeah.
Those Street Society fixes this year.
Yeah. So you're on Toxic Tonic now, are you? You're about to read Toxic Tonic?
No, I think I might have read that one. I don't know.
Oh, so you're on the Maxwell Murder next then?
Yeah, I think I'm on the Maxwell Murder next.
Okay,
I might just have started a story in the book that I think might give me a spoiler.
Okay.
Somewhere it talks about things that happened to the Maxwells, and I was like, I don't know if I want to read this.
I know they talked about. I think they said that something bad had happened, but I think I purposely took out the short story, I think I took out the actual Pacific reference, I think.
Oh, okay.
So, but
I mean,
yeah,
I'll still read them even if I knew what happened, so it wouldn't matter.
yeah. I have been told that the Maxwell murder is quite emotional, so you might need a box of tissues.
Oh, don't do that to me. Who else? There was a book. Do you know William Hussey? He's one of our Facebook group authors.
Yeah.
He's got a YA book, and I was reading it at school, thinking this is fine. I can read the school, and I was literally crying in my lunch hour
Oh.
at the book, and I was like, I'm not. No, we're not friends anymore.
Oh. Because one of my beat readers read the Maxwell murder, and she was like, "This is one of the most intense, emotional books of the series so far." And she's like, "Had to finish it." She was like, "When I put the more, I had to finish it to find out what happened." So yeah,
I'm a big fan of the ones with like a spiritual hint as well. I quite like them when you dip into that and get the spiritualists involved.
oh yeah, I do like Mr. Verity. He's very much, he knows what he believes, knows what he doesn't. But then it's fun to then pair him up with someone like Mr. Elliot, who's very much black and white. No, doesn't exist. It's rubbish. But spiritualism was a big thing in the Victorian era. So I think in terms of regardless whether or not you believe in that or not, I think it's interesting to explore people's attitudes and actually how that was approached back then. But I personally, I love the paranormal and sort of myths and legends and hauntings, and I watch all those programs and YouTube channels and everything. And I think it just feeds into that air of just mystery. If you like mysteries generally, I think paranormal is an extension of that because it's another mystery which we just can't explain in some instances. So I do enjoy like slipping those in, and again, because it just gives you an interesting platform to then see how the characters will react and how they will sort of deal with that situation.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's especially with that era of time.
Yeah.
So many people were really obsessed with like spiritual.
Yeah, spiritualism, yeah.
It's good that it does creep in.
Yeah. Because the spectral shot, it's all about that explores the novel. The spectral shot explores what that anyway, doesn't it? The talking board and the dolls that they used to use to sort of encoax children's child spirits and everything. So that was really good to do. But because I am planning to in the future to do spin-offs with certain members, and I would like to do a more traditional haunted house story with Mr. Verity as his spin-off story. Because there was a ghost hunting society that actually existed back then. So I can see him being part of that and being like, let's go and investigate this paranormal activity at this remote haunted house. So I think it'd be good to actually explore that, how you would do away from society, but as a ghost hunter and a spiritualist.
I like this idea. I'm for some spin-off stories.
Yeah, because I think they've got so many different sort of occupations and personalities that they do also lend themselves to different genres as well. So I could see Mr. Locke being a bit more of an action type spy type, because he's a master thief as well as being an illusionist, and then also like you could then toy with sort of like the historical sort of reference books and tour guides by having like Dr. Wicks' Guide to London Pubs, where he would talk about his favourite pubs, but then how he also helped investigate and solve a crime there. But he would also say, well, I wouldn't recommend this drink, or I recommend this snug, or the history of the pub. So I quite like the idea of doing that as well, really. But again, it's just to expand the universe, but also just take the characters away from society and see what they do in their general day-to-day life, really.
I quite like the fact that the society carries on helping people sometimes even after the case is finished. Do you know what I mean? You give like a resolution. So I'm trying to do this without any spoilers, but you give a resolution in a lot of stories where you might solve the puzzle, but it's not necessarily solved in the sort of traditional solving of a crime way. And then they're still like, oh, we're going to go back and look after this person, or we're going to make sure they're okay and nothing's going to happen to them again. I quite like.
Yeah. I like with the short stories, I like sort of you think it's going to go one way, they start investigating, thinking they've got this preconceived idea of what actually the solution is going to be, and actually they've thrown a curveball, there's a twist at the end, and like you say, just like life, things aren't always neatly wrapped up in a conclusion at the end. Things do continue, people do still have problems, and you can't solve everybody's problems in like an hour, like a murder she wrote. but also with the characters as well, because they're all part of this whole series. It's their lives continue. They still have the same dramas. They still have the same problems. So it's good to sort of between at the beginning of the next book, I like to revisit how things were at the end of the last book and sort of bridge that gap and say to the reader, well, this is what they've been doing. This is how the characters dealt with things since that short time since the last book. Because again, say their lives are still continuing. So I don't know what's going to happen when I get to the end of the series, but
you're never going to get to the end of the series. There's always going to be some Bow Street Society books.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, at the moment, there's 10 planned in the moment. So there will be resolutions to quite a lot of the plot lines by book 10. And then we'll see. But I have now planned out up to book 9. So I do know what's going to happen to certain characters.
Ooh.
In up to book 9, yeah. So unfortunately, not everybody's going to survive. But anyway, we'll move on from that.
I'll drop things like that and then just go move on from that. How do you keep coming up with, because you've got so many short stories and the novels, how do you keep coming up with really fresh, kind of clever ideas? Because there's some of the stories, because I've read quite a few of the short story collections, some of the stories and some of the actual novels have such clever plots. How do you keep coming up with?
I don't know. I think I do a lot of research, go to a lot of museums, just watch a lot of TV programs, videos, do a lot of reading. I think you just got to you sort of get the little germ of the idea first of all. So with the novels, I've approached differently compared to the novels than short stories. In the novels, I think, well, what's the theme going to be in this novel? So each novel tend to have like a general theme. So the last one was boxing. The book 7 is going to be around the theatre. So that will help me sort of decide, okay, well, now I know what the setting is, what's now going to be the mystery, and I decide. Then I think of the method of the murder, and then I go from there really. But a lot of it, it's very much with both short stories and the novels, is how the plot is then shaped. It depends on the research, because if they couldn't detect a certain poison or couldn't detect a certain way, or they couldn't have a particular method that you have now, or even like in the early 20th century that wasn't around 1896, 1897, I have to then change it. But and with the short stories, I will tend to start with the pairing. Who do I want in this short story who hasn't been in it a while? And then I then go from there in terms of, okay, what kind of mystery or what kind of puzzle can they investigate? But I do like the more quirky, because I do like sort of disappearances. I like locked rooms. I like the ones where, so there was one was the teacup, where she's in the parlour with a supposedly travel salesman, and then he basically takes a teacup from a parlour and he blackmailed her to say that, well, we were alone together for all this time. I'm going to tell your husband we're basically something going on between us. So then she has to call the society in to try to get his teacup back. So even though it's not a full-blown crime per se, it's a bit more of a, all they've been asked to do is get his teacup back, basically. But again, it's sort of it's toying with that format, toying with those sort of bit more quirky problems, because something like that wouldn't necessarily last for a whole novel, but I do like to still throw those in occasionally. So that's why the short stories are good and handy for that, really.
I read one in one of the collections about a heist, I think.
Yeah.
It was like in a train carriage, and that was brilliant.
Oh, they all stood around the box and nobody goes near the box, and then the gold is gone.
Yeah. And then like, how did they do it? Because everybody was here and we were
watching the box.
Yeah. I liked that. Because I was going, I do not know how they've done this.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to remind myself when I'm writing the novels or writing the short stories that sometimes it feels really obvious to me. I'm like, well, of course it seems obvious to me because I'm writing it. I know what the solution is. So I've got to try and flip it and try to see from the reader's point of view, so how obvious would this be to the reader? So I am very conscious of that I don't make things too obvious, but then sometimes I do think, oh, I made, and I do get a bit paranoid about that. But it's, I did quite like that story.
So apart from the books you read for research, do you like other books kind of set in that era that you write in, or?
I do and I don't. It depends how well sort of accurate the other books are. Because even though I'm trying to read for enjoyment, and even though I think right now I'm going to read it because I enjoy it, inevitably it's always something that comes out. I'm like, that's not right, and then I can't stop thinking about it, you know. And it's but then a book like that is done really well, then it's I really enjoy it even more. So I really enjoyed the William Quest books by John Bainbridge, which is set in still in the 1900s, sorry, 19th century, but it's sort of a bit further, like earlier, and also they're more thriller and more spy. So that's really good. And also his wife Anne Bainbridge, she writes Inspector Abbs, so that's in 1870s, but he's a Scotland Yard detective. So I'm actually in contact with both Anne and John. It's really interesting sort of comparing notes between her research of Scotland Yard and my research of Scotland Yard, because in between those two books they move buildings, and so by the time I'm writing, they're in the red brick Norman Shaw building by the Thames. So if I can sort of like hook up with other writers who are writing the same era as me, then I will. But other than that, just generally sort of historical sort of set books or something that's completely different era. So I really like the Nero Wolfe mysteries by Rex Stout, because I just really love the dynamic between Archie and Nero Wolfe. But that's sort of set in the early 20th century, just like 1930s, 40s. But again, that's another era that I like. I like the hard-boiled Raymond Chandler type-esque detective stories. If I was going to do another completely different series, that would probably be the kind of style that I would write in. A bit more hard-boiled.
Tempted, especially with the short stories, to do an anthology where you do mess around with like different kind of eras or styles or genres? You writing short stories, but not for the Bow Street Society.
I would. I mean, I did before the Bow Society. There was actually another pairing of detectives who I had written 3 short novellas for. That their stories were set in between the wars. So I would like to revisit them, but I mean, to be honest, at the moment, I'm so engrossed and so immersed in the world of the Bow Society that other than think of spin-offs and that sort of thing for them, I can't really think. My mind can't really think beyond that. And also, obviously, other commitments and everything. So I think it would be good to. I would like to do a different era, but I also like, again, with sort of what I would like to do is sort of, I think I said before, is to try to move things forward a little bit. It's like 1920 and see where the society members now. Because now basically now I've got to the point now where the characters just feel like real people to me. So I get to the point now where when I'm immersed in that writing process, that I don't feel as though I'm telling a story. I feel like I'm just retelling something that's already happened. It's a really weird sort of feeling. So to consider writing about anything else is a bit like, I almost be like, you know, burying them to a certain extent. And I don't feel ready to do that yet.
But I think this is a thing in the world that you created for your readers as well. That's what I was saying. Like, you read the book, like the Lighthouse book with Dr. Weeks and Skinner and like our architect. You know them as people, and you're like, oh, this is going to be interesting. They're going to go and look at this kind of thing, and you're guessing like where the story's going to go because you feel like the people that are going. Yeah. Like you're sort of settling back into the stories, reading your old friends.
Yeah, I kind of feel like when I start a new book in the series, I do have to almost got to gather them all back in again, and like I say, to get the all back in to like the fold and sort of really just get back that connection to the characters. And once that sort of clicks into place, it's like, yeah, so to deal with real people, and then I feel really bad when bad things happen to them, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I have to remind myself they're not real. They don't have feelings. But when you are writing those sort of bit more emotional, intense sort of stories and plot lines and scenes, you do then almost feel yourself going as well. But a lot of my readers will say that it's the characters in the series that do pull them back. They want to know what's going to happen next. They want to know what's going to happen to the Locks. They want to know what's happened with Dr. Weeks, what's happened with Conway, that sort of thing. And they really enjoy the mysteries, but they said that ultimately it's the members that keep bringing them back to the series over and over.
Yeah, I think that is. I would definitely agree with that. You've been asked, I think this is possibly Donna. Yes, it is. Can you write about the same era but from different angles so you can still use your research? And happy birthday, Donna's mum.
Happy birthday, Donna's mum.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean? So, some different angles. What does she mean by that?
Because you were sort of talking about writing in like different styles and different angles. And I guess
Yeah.
this is what you're doing with your spin-offs. Can
Yeah.
you keep the era the same so your research is less, but sort of go in a completely different way in the same era?
Yes. So obviously, with the Bow Society, it's a group of detectives. It's different detectives pulled in different each case. But what I would really like to do is, once this initial 10-book run is done, I would really like to do a new series, but with possibly one of the main police officers, and explore more, have a more procedural, police procedural sort of style. So you'd have him as the main detective, but then explore the sort of crimes that actually would have happened in the area at the time where he's based. And that's for me would be a completely different angle, in the sense that you only have the one character to focus on, but you can completely explore that character's world, that character's past, and actually show a different side to that character, which you don't see in the Bow Society books. You see that sort of their working world, and it's a bit darker world and a bit more grittier. And I think the Bow Society books, I think there's moments where it can get quite dark, but I think on the whole, it's not as gritty as some other crime fiction books out there. So I would like to maybe explore those darker areas and more harsher side of Victorian life, really.
You say that, but there is at least one where there's an almost Fight Club-esque moment with a situation. Sorry, I was just working out how to say that without giving away something. And that is quite dark. Not gonna lie.
I have to remember which book are you talking about? Then I can.
They do something quite nefarious with like people.
This is the second book.
Could be.
Yeah.
Is it the one in the department store?
Oh yeah, it's the second book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite dark.
Yeah, it could be darker than that.
It could be, but I'm like,
my imagination could go a lot darker than that, but I'm conscious of that. Yeah. It was quite. Yeah, it was. To be honest, it was quite dark. Yeah.
I mean that it had its moments there.
Yeah, but I think with that other series, I think it'd be a different kind of darkness, in the sense that this is the kind of darkness they deal with every day. It's not just the odd case. That's their everyday working life. And I think with the police characters, I think especially in the books, their job is their identity, and so to explore those themes of how their job affects identity, how their job affects their mental health, their personality, their home life or lack thereof, I think would just be. But also, I think there's a lot of people that they would know, informants, friends, old friends, family members, who you just don't get to meet inside your books because there's just no reason to, which I would like to explore more of in that standalone sort of separate series. So you might have a couple of them. This might make an appearance occasionally, but it would very much be just that one police officer and his daily life.
I think this is Donna as well, who's saying they'd love to see how dark you could go. It's like a challenge.
Yeah.
I actually quite like it where it's just suggested. I think they're creepier when there's like it's hinted at more than shown.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain lines that I've like promised myself, that I've told myself that I wouldn't cross in the books. There's certain crimes I wouldn't include, just because I just don't feel comfortable doing that. Because I used to work at the witness service, so I've sort of, even though we didn't know anything about the cases, you still saw the human impact of certain crimes, certain scenarios, and how it affects certain types of victims. I just think I just couldn't go into those sort of areas. So generally, there wouldn't be anything to do with children in terms of like violence against children or paedophilia, anything like that, and rape as well is another one that I very much don't want to cross that line either, because just for me personally, I just think I haven't been through that experience myself, and I just don't think I could do it justice for people who have been through that experience. I think sometimes, I think rape is very much used as a shock tactic, and there's no real plot basis to it. So again, that's another reason why I avoid it like the plague, basically.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do something like some of those topics, you do need to research it and handle it very sensitively, don't you? So I get that. If you don't feel comfortable going that way, don't. I mean, you've got such an imagination. You don't like with things, and I think the thing that makes the books lift apart from the scenes with the characters is like the really sort of intelligent, clever plots that they have
Okay.
that are
Thank you.
quite unique. You know, I like the fact that it's like heists or, you know, there's, you know, disappearances or blackmail or like
Yeah.
a spectral, you know, spiritual thing. I think that's what makes it interesting
Yeah.
as a series. And I think the thing that makes, if you read a lot of crime, you do like books that are, you know, sometimes a bit different from the ordinary.
Yeah.
So keep going the way you are.
Thank you. I'm trying.
They're great.
Oh, thank you.
What is so you? What can you tell us about book 7? Go on.
So yeah, so in book 7 we're now, because time does move forward within the series. So that does not give anything away. So basically, in book 6, it was Christmas time. We're now in mid-January 1897. So in a new year, hope you know, new beginnings. Things are developing rapidly with the main plot in the series, and this one is about the theatre. If you've been following the series, you will know that Mr. Locke and Illusionist and Dr. Locke, his wife, have been a little bit absent the last couple of books. They will be coming back into the fold in this next book. So look forward to seeing them. And beyond that, really, I can't give much else away without spoiling some major plots. But a lot's going to be happening, basically, a lot more twists and turns for certain characters.
Theatre was quite different in a way then, wasn't it? I read another really good book sort of set in the past, like theatre based. It was really good this year. It was called The Tumbling Girl.
Yeah.
I don't know if you come across that one, but it was great.
No, I haven't. No, but I did do a lot. I did do a lot of research into sort of the Victorian sort of theatre. I actually got a book that just tells you all about the mechanics of actually how the theatre itself worked. So the special effects, the lighting, also what the job roles the different people were in the theatre. Because I think the theatre very much was its own little microcosm of society itself, and everybody had different roles to play and different hierarchies. But also sort of I always love the little facts that people don't necessarily know. So with the point I'm writing, it generally was a big no-no to bring the house lights down. Everything was still performed with the lights up, because it wasn't just about seeing the performance. It was about seeing who was in the theatre, have a bit of a nose, have a little bit of gossip. And also the interesting idea that even electricity was starting to be brought in, they still had their gas lighting as a backup, you know. So sort of now you think, oh, you'd have it the other way around. So doing all those sort of things to sort of build up the picture and build up the circle of suspects was really interesting. So this is set in the West End, but it will be a fictional theatre, but it very much is inspired by theatres of the times, and very much the circle of suspects are based upon the roles of the theatre, certain sort of characters, actors. You've got it's actually a manageress rather than a manager of the theatre, so she owns the theatre, and sort of got her assistant manager, stage manager, and all those different sort of facets of the theatre. And also what I would like to do is try to bring a bit more in sort of the slang and the sort of terminology of the theatre into it as well. So part of that is also form some of the suspects and the motives in this story as well.
Sorry, I was looking up something about the thing. I've got when I teach special effects to the kids, there's a really good illusion called Pepper's Ghost that was developed in like the 1800s. It was like 1862 that was used in the theatre, according to
Yes.
thing. And I always think that must be quite a useful.
Yeah. So obviously with Mr. Locke, I'd sort of done research into the different illusions and stuff that they could do back then. I think I had come across Pepper's Ghost. But even just stuff like they had different trapdoors and winches, and everything was done on a winch, and just to have people to move across the stage and, you know, dive into the stage. And there is a particular effect that has informed the mystery, which I don't want to say what it is, because that kind of gives away a major plot point. So but it's very interesting how, again, it's that emerging modernity, which is not quite there yet, but you can see where it's going, and you can see how things are changing, how sort of society's attitudes are changing at the time as well. Because you've still got the musical halls, still got the penny gaffs and everything, but sort of theatre was very much sort of again trying to become sort of more respectable art forms. Very much like with boxing, you had the two camps of people who, you know, despise boxing, trying to ban it. You got the people who are trying to, like, you know, champion it and say it's an art form. You had the same sort of in the theatre. You had people say, oh, it's a house of sin. It's a hive of, you know, debauchery and immorality. And then you have the actors go, actually, no, you know, it's an art form. We're trying to sort of, you know, raise the profile of theatres and actually make it more respectable. So again, it's that sort of conflict between like the theatre itself and the wider society.
Yeah. We've got someone saying they're loving the sound of it.
Oh, good.
And it's going to be good because it's got. I think the locks are like really. I mean, this is the thing. Is the more you read the novels and the short stories, the more like favorite characters you get.
Yeah.
So why I'm now worried when you say some of them aren't going to survive, because I'm like, you can't kill off any of my favorites.
So who are your favourites?
I have quite a lot of favourites. So
then the list is getting smaller.
Yeah, your list is getting dramatically smaller. Like, it's not allowed. No.
You can't have a 10-book series about somebody, like, you know, shuffling off the mortal coil.
But there's got to be someone like that's not one of our favourites.
Okay, so who, if anybody sort of could die in the series, and who would you prefer to get bumped off?
Who would I prefer? Oh, I don't know.
Who don't you like the most?
Ooh. I'm going to go with either Dr. Weeks or Mr. Maxwell.
Oh, so you wouldn't mind if Mr. Maxwell got bumped off then?
No, not particularly.
Oh. He's very much a love him or hate him kind of character. You either want to pick up and slap him, or you want to pick him up and hug him, because he's just so, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a pick him up and slap him kind of person.
Oh, and what is it about Dr. Weeks that you won't mind seeing him?
I don't know. He doesn't come across as very likable. Always.
Okay.
I think that's part of his persona. I think
It is part of the persona, yeah.
Like, you know, he's just well written that way. But yeah. And you don't always see him as much, so I feel like he could be a bit more expendable. We've got Dr. Locke, like, you know.
But you need to read the next read the next 2 books, because more happens with Dr. Weeks.
No, I know there is. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be there. I think I've read around in a weird way and not seen him for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in my head, he's more expendable because I spent more time with the others.
Well, I think because actually in the 3rd book, he does step back from society. He does quit, I think. And so Dr. Locke does step in at that point, didn't she? I think. And then in Toxic Tonic, they're all forced to work together in the hotel because, yeah, circumstances just conspired against them all. So I think that's probably why it feels like he sort of did a bit of vanishing act there.
Yeah. But yeah, no. And then after that, most of them are my favourites.
So who's your most favourite?
Oh, I don't know if I have a most favourite, you know. The coachman.
Mr. Snyder.
Yeah. I like Mr. Skinner. I like the architect. I like Georgina.
Yeah. What do you think of the police officer characters? Is anybody in there that you prefer?
Well, some of them are quite. Yeah, I can't. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry, and it's been a long week. I'm like running my head through the names of the police characters. But yeah, no, most of the policemen are nice.
Apart from Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donna's like, can we have more interviews with Kaz put on the spot? This is fun.
I just need to test you, your both society knowledge.
Yeah. No, I'm very bad with. You wouldn't believe this. I think because I do it as a job. Like I memorize all the kids' names for a job. Like anywhere out of that, I'm terrible with them.
It also doesn't help you've got two characters named Percy as well, though, because Dr. Weeks and Dr. Mr. Locke are both called Percy.
Yeah, and like Mr. Snyder, the taxi driver, and Mr. Skinner, like have got similar surnames, and I was like, I'm going to call one of them the wrong surname.
Yeah. Yeah, I do try to avoid that, but yeah, sometimes it is unavoidable.
But I think with a big cast of characters, you can't avoid it as easily,
yeah.
can you? You know.
No.
But yeah. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to ask you my favorite question of like your reads of the year.
Okay, well, did I put me on the spot now?
So I'm getting my revenge.
Yeah. So definitely has to be The Great Frost by Chris Speck. Absolutely love that book. Ironically, my favourite character in that was the Highwayman, even though, you know, he's hardly in it. But I really enjoyed that book. The third William Quest book, I can't remember what that's called now. Deadly Quest. That's actually what John Bainbridge done with him, though, was he took him out of London and he's put him in York. And I've been to York a couple of times. That was really interesting to see the character having to deal with sort of dangers and sort of intrigue and conspiracy within streets that he's completely not familiar with, because the character very much knows the streets of London like the back of his hand, and he relies on that instinct to be able to survive. So it was interesting sort of seeing him taken out of that environment. I suppose, yeah. So the book about the Ellen Moore lighthouse keepers, I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, so I haven't read that much this year, but those three are definitely up there for books that I enjoy.
When you want to send Mr. Verity off to do his haunted house investigation, York would be a perfect place to send him.
Yeah.
It is very haunted.
It is very haunted. But I could see, I could almost, Mr. Benjamin's one of those characters I could see. I'll start off with just one book. I should stand alone. And people are like, oh no, we want more. So they end up doing like a little like tour of England probably. Because he's originally from Durham. So he might end up going back to Durham initially to explore those streets. I think there's a underground street in Durham. So it'd be interesting sort of, because my family's actually from the northeast. So it'll be good to do a bit more exploration and into that history. But yeah, so that those sort of stories that I've sort of toying with in the background really, and they will be sort of more focused on once the main series is done. But I am hoping to take at least, well, to go maybe part-time or maybe even take a whole year out next year just to focus on the books and sort of explore these different sort of ideas and try to just really build upon the universe really. So that's what I'm hoping to do next year.
Oh, that's interesting. You can do some northern research trips as well.
Oh yeah, I've just literally come back from Darlington, so I went to Whitby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I went to Whitby the second time I've been to Whitby. I love Whitby. And then we went to York. We did go to York as well, Christmas shopping. That was an experience. And then we went through to see my grandparents in Durham. So so I've still got family up there. My sister's up there, so I can quite easily go and do some northern exploration research trips. We like them.
I absolutely love Whitby.
Yeah.
It's just so gothy and interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because one of my friends, Chris A. Turnbull, his detective series, Detective Matthews, is set in Whitby, and that is on my to be read list, a massive to be read list. So I do want to read that, because I think when you've been to a place and then you read a book that's set there, it just makes it just get a whole different perspective and a whole different sort of level. And then it's then good to go back to that place. Oh, this is where this scene happened, or this is where that happened. That scene happened. So that is definitely on my books to be read.
You've been asked if you've got any further into organising your book event in Bletchley.
No. Was that from Donna, was it?
I'm going to guess so. I can't say it says Facebook user. I'll look it up. I'm going to guess that sounds like Donna, doesn't it?
Yes. So again, there's another thing that if I'm able to take a year out next year to look into doing that. So the idea was to do a completely indie crime fiction event, but say to put work with Bletchley Park. And so your entry into the Bletchley Park sort of complex would get you entry into the crime fiction sort of event. But I was going to call it Code Word Crime, So it would sort of link in with the whole Bletchley Park thing. And but because I've with my interviews done with my blog, I've sort of been in contact with quite a few sort of like curators and museum people. So I was maybe going to get certain people to come in to do talks as well. So this is an idea that I was just toying with really. So and I think because Bletchley's Park is quite good for like the rail links as well. So this is something that I was So I'm not any further in terms of organising that, but I would like to do that. The other location I was thinking of possibly doing is the old Bow Street Magistrates Court building. So because the actual courtroom in the hotel is their ballroom now, I think it is. So you can actually hire what was the old Magistrates Court. So I think that would be quite cool to do a kind of event there, maybe.
Yeah, an old police museum as well, I think. There's like a Bradford Police Museum. They have like rooms and a bit like, oh, it's not, that doesn't have a lot of space though, but I'm like, oh, like an old police museum or somewhere would be a really cool place.
Because West Midlands Police Museum they're in the lockup in Birmingham, but also Shrewsbury Prison I think it was maybe November this year or November next year. But somebody's done an actual event there where it's authors behind bars. So each author's been given a cell in the prison. So you then go around the book event and you just go into each cell. So you can then explore the authors that way. So again, like I say, with a police museum or something like a lockup would be quite good to do it that way, maybe.
Yeah, but Bletchley Park would be good.
Sorry?
Bletchley Park would be good. I've never been there, but it'd be a fascinating place to visit.
It is. I mean, I actually had a job there for a day, but it is really interesting place to visit. And the National Computer Museum, as we all know now, because of the IO Security Conference, is next door. So the Manor House is really nice. It's not a massive location, but I think with that kind of event, I think it's important to sort of start small if you're not very experienced and then just build up from there really. So I've done event sort of stuff in the past with other jobs, but this would be the first time I've organised my own event. So I might be calling upon your expertise and knowledge for that.
You'd be welcome.
Yeah.
I think my main expertise and knowledge went towards writing our risk assessment for the event. I got volunteered to do that because I don't even want to count how many I've written for work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Mrs. knows how to write a risk assessment, so I got volunteered.
It's amazing what you've got to write a risk assessment for, because when I did the filming of the book trade of Case of Curious Client, in order to be in line with the insurance I'd got out for the shoot, I had to do a risk assessment. So it was stuff like make sure the lights don't scratch the floor in the museum, and you make sure you get a fire extinguisher and this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's like I'm just there for a day. It's just crazy. We've got to think about.
Try writing an educational trip one.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be a bit of a nightmare.
That requires an awful lot of paperwork.
Yeah, I can imagine. So talking about events, so obviously UK Crime Book Club Live 2 is happening next year, isn't it? On the 8th of June, isn't it?
It is. We are sneaking out the panel things as my Mr. Makes the posters.
Yes.
For it.
Yes, I was on the panel last year, the first event. It was a really good panel, really good event. So if you have got the time, you are free on that day, then I'll definitely highly recommend you go to the event because it's absolutely fantastic.
I'm hoping that it's as good this year.
I'm sure it will be.
Feeling quite smug about one of the panels I've invented. When it's finally made and I can announce it, I'm going to be like, everyone's going to be like, no, that's rubbish. Like, for months I've been thinking this is brilliant.
I'm sure it will be brilliant. Everybody really enjoyed it last year, and I plan to go as well this year. So it's going to be really looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. Well, it'd be nice to see everyone again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. We're trying to sort of give as many people a chance to be there as possible.
Yeah. Which is fair enough. Because it's really popular, so yeah, everybody wants to.
Yeah, we've got a lot of volunteers, and I've not even used all the volunteer list. Just because, like, you've got to sort of make it match with panels and stuff as well. This is the thing you're going to learn when you do the event, because you get lots of volunteers, and then you have like a panel idea, and you might have like a lot of
two authors
don't work with the idea. So it's whether you use, it gets really complicated.
Yeah, you might just have to have 2 days. I'd go to a 2-day event.
We might have to go to a 2-day event, but that costs more.
Yeah. That'll be a plan for the future.
Yeah, maybe. Plan for the future, I've got more money.
Yeah.
If everyone buys tickets for this one, and we have lots of money left, we might have a 2-day one.
Yeah. You need a sponsor.
Pardon?
You need a sponsor. You need to get a company sponsor. I don't know who could sponsor you, but we could get somebody.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to do that, the same thing in a job thing, trying to work out if we can get some sponsors or like helpers or whatever. But I've got my kids working on that because I can incorporate like free labor to help me.
Yeah. Fair enough.
At work, I can be like, you can write the letters with all the names.
Fair enough. Might as well.
Yeah, a bit harder when it's like you don't have like that sort of custom on hand.
You could get somebody like Houdini escape rooms to sponsor or something. Something that's like got like that mystery element to it. That would be like, you know. And you could have an escape room as part of the event. And if you could get out of the room in a record time, you win a prize.
If you can get out the room, you can go to the event.
That would be interesting to see. You've got all these crime authors. How well can they solve the puzzles in the escape room? That, you know, how complicated these puzzles can be, and see how quick they can do that to then get out.
Yeah, I think we should test all the authors at the events. You should have to solve a puzzle on stage or something.
Yeah, Rubik's Cube.
That got like diverted after a random call.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Of the chat. Remind people who are watching what they're going to go away and buy.
So I write the Bow Society series of books. So that's the first one. That's Case of Curious Klein, and I also write the Bow Society case book. That's a short story collection. So the most recent one that is the Case of the Scream and the Smog and Other Stories. So you can find out more about both series and the Bow Society itself on my website, bowstreetsociety.com. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I will also be hopefully streaming on Twitch in the new year to incorporate my love of gaming with my love of Victoriana. So that would be interesting.
How are you going to do that?
Sorry?
How are you going to do that? Are you going to play Victorian themed games?
Yeah, so there's a series of games based around Sherlock Holmes. So Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper, Sherlock Holmes Testament, and I'm basically going to there's quite a lot of Sherlock Holmes games actually to play those. There's also Agatha Christie PC games. So I was going to play those, and basically with the Victorian ones to dissect how accurate they are, how close they are to the books. But then when Agatha Christie sort of talk about the golden era detective fiction, and again how close they are to the books, because actually was a new Agatha Christie game came out this year, believe it or not, with Poirot in. So it's just trying to sort of introduce people who maybe like puzzle games into sort of the world of crime fiction and vice versa. So, and also get people on for interviews. So I might be calling on you for an interview. So
I absolutely adore the Sherlock Holmes games.
Yeah, good. Because I've completed the Jack the Ripper one. But Dr. Claire Smith, who is the heritage manager at the Metropolitan Police Heritage Collection, she did a webinar on the representations of Jack the Ripper in film. So I think it'd be quite good to get her on and talk about that while I'm playing Jack the Ripper versus Sherlock Holmes on Twitch. So again, adding in the different sort of layers of the game, and also the legends and the mythos behind it, really.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. You'll have to tell me when you're doing it. I'm going to watch.
So I already have a Bow Street Society channel on Twitch, so go and follow that if you're on Twitch.
I'm not, but I might be. Finding out about it.
But yeah, so all the books are available on Amazon for ebook and paperback. I say the volumes 1 to 5 of the Society Casebook collections are free to download for non-Kindle Unlimited subscribers to celebrate the release of the 6th collection, which is coming out on Friday. And so the most recent book in the main series, The Case of the Pugilist Ploy, which is also available on Amazon.
Brilliant. And then all that's left to say is thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.